If you've been looking for a church to attend or a ministry to get involved with, we have a very special program for you today. Hello and welcome to Ministry Connections. I'm Evangelist Patrick Hoban, the local ministry director here at Salem and AM 980 The Mission. Each week on Ministry Connections, we highlight a local church or a ministry so that you can get to know them a little bit better. Now, if you know of a church or a ministry that you would like us to feature or highlight, just drop us an email at comments@salemtc.com. And you can also follow us on our Facebook and YouTube pages. Just look for AM 980 The Mission, and you can watch past and present interviews there. Now, today we have something different. I am excited to bring you this interview. We have all heard of the war in Ukraine. Well, I know somebody that has traveled there and also ministers there, and his name is Lee Scheumann of Hand Together. Lee, welcome to the program.
Great to be here, Patrick.
Now, we like to give a little bit of background to the person that we're interviewing. You told me earlier on that you were from Indiana, but tell us a little bit of where you're from and how you got to Minnesota.
Oh, got to Minnesota. I went to school in Indiana, Taylor University. In my senior year, I really had a life crisis. My mom died. It's like, okay, what is life all about? And frankly, for years, I was resisting this whole notion of being a pastor. I thought, I don't want to do this. I went kicking and screaming into it. Ended up going to seminary, Trinity Evangelical Divinity School in Deerfield, Illinois. Found out they were affiliated with the Evangelical Free Church of America. 3.5 years later, I had an invitation to come to North Branch, Minnesota, the KOST, K-O-S-T, Evangelical Free Church. And I was pastor there for 10 years. Then moved to Illinois. I was there at the Village Church of Lincolnshire for 4 years. And then in 1991, we received a call to come to Oxlip Evangelical Free Church, and I was there for 32 years.
And that is north of the Twin Cities, is that correct?
That is north of the Twin Cities. So I proudly say I've probably two of the most oddest named churches that is in our denomination. Cost-free church, you know.
Cost-free.
Cost-free. We would call it the cheap church, and then oxlip, which is a flower. Actually, I'm going to be defensive here. There's an intellectual reason for this. It is not the lip of a bromine. It is a flower. It's ground cover. It's a beautiful yellow flower.
Oxlip, I remember that growing up in Ireland, actual fact. Yeah, it's very pretty.
Yeah.
So, you pastored for how long in total?
Total about 46.5 years.
Wow, that's a great achievement. People don't understand longevity in the ministry is rare sometimes. And oftentimes, because it's such a difficult position, I just recommend everybody pray for your pastors out there, because a lot of people put a lot of demands on pastors, and it is a tough calling indeed. Anyway, but I met you recently when some soldiers from the Ukraine were over at an interview north of here. And tell us a little bit how you got involved with ministry in the Ukraine.
It actually started kind of a surprise for me. It was in 1991. I still remember very vividly going out, picking up the mail, bitterly cold day. And here was a letter from Greater Europe Mission. And I knew that was significant because back in the day, if it was junk mail, it's on the label. If it's significant, it was typed. It was typed. It was from Don Brugman, who was a kind of working in Europe with the Baptist Union in Ukraine. They were looking for teachers to come to teach at first I thought, I don't know how I ever will pronounce the name of this city. It's Zaporozhye, very, very popular now with the nuclear power plant as a result of the war. And they were looking for teachers to come to teach modular classes. They were so desperate, it's like, choose whatever you want. Just come teach for 2 weeks. And I did, taught the book of Acts, thoroughly enjoyed it, came back next year, taught a class on pastoral counseling. Then I became addicted to it, came back a third year, taught a class on Christian ethics. And and I thought it was good, and yes, I'd probably like to do this again, but then two of my students approached me and said, we want to start a church in our city, and we want you to sponsor us to do that. Well, I realized I can't do both. I can't teach and do this. I'm pastor of a church here. I can't be gone all that long. And, candidly, being a pastor, the pastoral was more of a draw for me than the academic circles. So then we switched gears, helped to start that church, helped to get it organized, helped to get it off the ground, helped them to buy a building, helped them to renovate the building. And then I thought, well, I'm probably done. And this was about 2009. So it's obviously
2009, so it's a bit of way ago now.
Bit of way ago. And then I received an invitation from a couple of friends of mine in Lindstrom, Minnesota, and they were sending fire protection equipment to Peru, Moldova, and they knew I was involved in Ukraine and said, well, can you help us? Do you think they want a container of fire protection gear? And there's a lot of that becomes available because all fire departments in the United States every 10 years have to buy full new uniforms, from boots to helmets. And they have to retire the stuff that is there, and either goes thrown in the dump yard or it gets taken to someplace overseas that might receive it. And so, probably since that time, I've helped deliver 1,000 sets of gear to Ukraine.
Wow.
Then when I was there, I came back, another ministry approached me, and they were sending clothing and used clothing with Legacy Thrift Store in Robbinsdale. And so they were getting the things that weren't being sold. It was being packed, sent to Ukraine. They were looking for another place to send this. Well, the city that I was working in, Melitopol, a city of 150,000 people, had a network of distribution points, and they were just really eager to do this. So we were sending like 2-3 containers of clothing there a year.
Wow, containers. Now, how?
Containers.
Just to get the audience to know, how big are containers?
We used a full-size container, 40 feet long, 9.5 feet tall, and 8 feet wide.
Wow.
Holds up typically about 30,000 pounds of humanitarian aid.
Wow.
Then it started to expand in that we started sending just small amounts of medical equipment. This is through another local ministry called Matter 360. And so then beyond that, we started in 2014, when they had all the difficulties that were there that caused a lot of upheaval. We started sending food, and this is working with a local ministry in Cambridge called Life Rice, which is very similar to Kids Against Hunger or Feed My Starving Children.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are rice-based, highly nutritional meals that we were sending. So I'm kind of doing this. I'm getting close to retirement. I'm thinking, this will be a fun thing to do. Then I became affiliated with another local organization called the Minnesota Coalition for Eastern Europe, which is a funding organization, and we fund ministries in Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, Czech Republic.
Now, these are ministries, these are churches in these former Eastern Bloc countries.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and we help to underwrite the cost of pastoral training, children's camps, and it helps to underwrite the cost now of some of the humanitarian aid that I sent.
Wow.
So then I retired, but then the war broke out and everything changed. Everything changed. I thought perhaps I'm done because, again, the city that I'd worked in, that fell the second day of the war. The people that I knew were scattered. The people that were doing aid, the other place I was doing aid was in the capital city of Kyiv. Well, the place I was doing in Kyiv, they were within 2 miles of the furthest advance of the Russian army. And I thought, well, probably done, maybe so. But I'd had this contact, a project I was working on with Matter 360, and we were going to send a full container of medical supply and medical equipment. And but then, my fundings got messed up. I wasn't too sure what I was going to do. They called me one day and they said, look, if you have a warehouse and if you have nurses that can help sort it, and if you can get this palletized, we will send the first container for free. Well, that's a $6,000 gift right there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here I am getting ready to retire, but in my congregation, even though a relatively small congregation of less than 150, I have 5 nurses in that congregation.
Wow.
They were willing to help do this, identify in a sense, what's surgical, what's suction, what's intravenous. I mean, I don't know this. And Matter 360 said, look, we'll deliver it to your location at no cost. Then the Easter of that day, here's a remarkable thing, Patrick. Here's a man who visits my church for the first time, the only time, never met him again. He works for a local factory. He says, we throw boxes away all the time.
Wow.
I think they'll give you to it. Then I realized I've got 4 or 5 people from my church who work at that location. It was Federal Cartridge.
Amazing. Amazing. You've been listening to Ministry Connections on AM 980 The Mission, where we give you a better look at a local ministry here in the Twin Cities. And I have with me here today Lee Scheumann of Hand in Hand. We have only a few minutes left, Lee, but, it seems as if God positioned you at the right place at the right time, having nurses in your congregation to help these people. In the last few minutes that we have, how difficult is it in the Ukraine right now for churches mainly and the people?
It's to paraphrase Charles Dickens, it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. It's the worst of times that in eastern Ukraine, where Russia has occupied that area, all churches except those of the Moscow Patriarchate have been closed. Those pastors have all been told, leave. All buildings have been confiscated. They've been locked up.
So in Russia, the evangelical church is basically coming under kind of a persecution?
Oh, my goodness, yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, those areas of eastern Ukraine, which are occupied by the Russian government, all those churches have been closed. The Russians have taken over ownership of that. And the pastors have been told, the ones which I have known, with the exception of one, have been told they have to leave. The only one who is not left that I'm aware of is also a veterinarian, and they've told him, since he's the only veterinarian in a city of now 60,000 people, you can't leave.
See, that's a perspective that we are not being told.
No.
And as a gospel-believing Christians, we need to support our brothers and sisters in those countries.
Yeah.
Because I do know some Orthodox Russian believers, and they're good, solid Christians.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, if you're not Orthodox Christian, you're not Russian.
Right.
And so the persecution goes on. And many times the Orthodox Church looks on evangelical Christians as heretics.
Yes.
And we know we're not. We're Bible-believing Christians. So, 10 million Ukrainians displaced, hundreds of thousands on both sides killed.
Yeah.
How should we as believers pray in the last minute or so of this interview?
Well, again, put it this way, it's as Jesus, said to the church of Smyrna, be faithful unto death. I'll give you the crown of life. And it's a grind. It's really, really hard, even in Western Ukraine, because the economy is under a strain. A lot of people have been drafted, into the army. Churches have been disrupted, things like that. But the remarkable thing is, Patrick, last year the Baptist Union had more baptisms than ever before in a given year. Wow. Churches are being started, pastors are being trained, people are encouraged. It is the worst of times, but also for the gospel, the best of times.
Best of times. Pastor Lee, what a tremendous story. I would encourage everyone that listened to this interview today, share it with your friends. Let's pray for the people in Eastern Europe, especially the Ukraine, and even in Russia, the pastors and the Christians there. We need to pray for them, encourage them. If you want to get involved, what's the website real quickly, Pastor?
It is www.handinhandlogistics.org.
Handinhandlogistics.org. You've been listening to Ministry Connections on AM 980 The Mission, where you get a better look into local ministries and churches in the area. We thank you for listening. Until next time, God bless you, and share this with all your friends. God bless.